Hi, I'm James McGuire, and today we're talking about one of the biggest challenges in enterprise IT, which is how do you manage a multi-cloud environment? One company, a few different clouds, different protocols, different feature sets, maybe even different costs. How does one company manage all that? To discuss that and cloud in general, I'm joined by two real thought leaders. With me is Matt Ferguson, Director of Product Development, Cloud Computing at Cisco. Hello to you, Matt.
Hi, James. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Good to have you on board today. Also with us is Konstantinos Rangeris, Product Marketing Manager, Cloud Computing at Cisco. Kostas, tell me I did not butcher your last name too badly.
You did. It was a great pronunciation. Thanks for that, because many people can get it wrong. And glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
And you are actually coming to us from Athens, Greece today, which is kind of interesting.
Yes, it is.
You know, I want to drill into CloudCenter. I think it's really interesting, Cisco CloudCenter. But let's talk a little bit about the multi-cloud sector. What's going on with that? I think there's a lot of challenges there, a lot of possibility. I mean, I think that CloudCenter really is. Multi-cloud really has become this established technology, but it's you know, how do you deal with all that? You know, Matt, what do you see in terms of customers using multi-cloud? What are some of the challenges? What are they really dealing with these days?
Well, I'll tell you, the landscape has really changed. And I think complexity is number one. You know, if you think about the tools in order to enable an IT organization for their own, you know, internal IT infrastructure, that's one area that I think they can, you know, they've established, you know, real expertise on. But when you start branching out, you have to learn the tools, you have to understand the capabilities of the other clouds that you might be starting to leverage for a number of reasons. And I think that is just a tremendous ask, let alone you have other factors, costs, you have other complexities as far as assurance of the service, the security of the service. So that sort of landscape and that grows that sort of overall complexity paradigm.
What is your sense of how customers are feeling about managing multi-cloud? Is there a sense overall like, oh my God, we're lost, but we're doing the best we can? Or is there a sense like, well, it's working, but we wished it worked better? I mean, what is the overall attitude as you see it?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, I think it's a journey, quite candidly. And so this journey, I mean, right now, I mean, CIO Perspectives is indicating that 67%, you know, are still starting their journey to multi-cloud. So there is still quite a bit of organization. So I don't think anybody's left behind. I think we're in pretty unprecedented times right now, don't get me wrong, where I think digitization and the race to embrace cloud is really accelerating. So I think the pressure in order to leverage those capabilities of what cloud offers is really accelerating. And that's what's going on.
Yeah, accelerated among other things by the pandemic itself. Of course, it's accelerating the move to the cloud, to be sure. Kostas, what do you see in the multi-cloud world? I mean, is governance the biggest issue? Is it migrating between the platforms? Is it different cost structures? What's a headache? And what do you see out there in the multi-cloud world?
I guess all of the above, but you know, there's I feel that it's important to make some clarifications when it comes to using those terms as well. And we see that every day. You know, there's this constant dialogue about multi-cloud versus cloud or multi-cloud versus hybrid clouds, etc. I mean, if you take a step back and you look at what has been happening in the industry, is that for the last 10 years at least, there's this big expansion. There's customers and IT organizations, so they're IT organizations that are moving away from on-premises services. And that is happening in two different ways, right? One is consuming directly SaaS, like you know, we're having a conversation right now, but I was able to sudo install software using my browser in three seconds, and now I'm here talking to you. So half of the tools that we use as Cisco employees are basically delivered from the cloud, from different organizations. So there's two different motions. There's this SaaSification of everything, and companies that customers that are using SaaS a lot. And of course, there's this need to be able to leverage all this innovation that is coming from the big public cloud providers, such as, you know, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM, etc. I think the conversation around multi-cloud is, in most of the cases, and I know we're here to talk about CloudCenter and the plans that Matt has and his team in terms of the the product portfolio for Cisco. So it's mostly around that, but there's also a big element around security, a big element around networking. What we're seeing, and to summarize, what we're seeing in the industry and when we talk to customers is, and as you said, because of the pandemic, this immense pressure that now the IT operations teams are feeling to be able to stand up services, be it developer resources, for example, and being able to apply that governance that you said, that secure connectivity, and that speed that Matt is going to be talking to you about. But also in terms of, I want to be using Office 365 or Salesforce. It's a SaaS product. How can I take that? How can my OT operations team take that and provide that and enable that the lines of business and the users within the organization, not just developers?
Mm-hmm. So, all right, so let's talk about Cisco CloudCenter. I mean, I think it's an obvious question, but I'll ask it anyway. So I'm this theoretical company. I'm working with AWS. I'm working with Azure. I need to manage it all. Am I going to use Cisco CloudCenter for that? Matt, how do I use this?
Oh, first and foremost, absolutely. I think the point. So let me step back a little bit, because CloudCenter has been a product within Cisco for over 5+ years.
Ah, okay.
So this isn't a product that is brand new and we're entering the market. We've evolved. We've grown this product for over a number of years. And we did have a heritage of CloudCenter working with private clouds as well. And I think that's an area that I think we would also acknowledge that a lot of IT organizations have stood up a private cloud, and they are looking to operationalize that private cloud just as the same experience that you would get from an AWS or an Azure or a Google Cloud. Mm-hmm. The thing that becomes challenging is what I talked about a little bit earlier, is how do I get the same experience? How do I get the same controls? How do I get the same agility that I would inherently get with an AWS or a Google, but have that experience also on a private cloud? And so I think we're starting to see scenarios where workloads absolutely are gravitating to cloud because of what it offers. But at the same time, there's compelling reasons why, an IT organization would still have a private cloud in their data centers.
Right. Is it a sense, I think there's a lot of IT managers out there who dream that their private cloud is such a close mirror of the actual public cloud that they can hardly tell the difference between them. Is that a hope and dream of many IT managers? And does Cisco CloudCenter try to create that world?
Well, no, go ahead, Kostas.
I was going to say there's like a big conversation around what is a private cloud, what's not a private cloud, and there's this I think where the industry is going, and one of the things that we do is talk to analysts and follow their definition and terminology. We're moving away from this need to equate the environments and call an on-premises environment necessarily private cloud. That happened with OpenStack previously, like 5 years ago, etc. That's where CloudCenter comes in, by the way, because it does offer that agility and that IT as a service posture that your organization might want. But I think where things are going is there's this realization that there's different platforms. We're acknowledging the differences. My on-premises environment will look one way, and I'm looking to do X, Y, Z, and I'm using 2 or 3 different clouds to do different things because I want to harness and leverage the innovation. It might be because I'm looking at AI, ML, and there's one cloud that my developers are familiar with.
Google in that case, perhaps. But
exactly. So that's what we're hearing for customers. But I think we're moving away from that from that situation, from that scenario when we're just hectically trying to make the environment on-prem just look exactly like a cloud. It's a different motion. Which is why we're talking more and more about hybrid IT. And we understand that, there's an organizational department that, for example, within a customer that wants to move and just use Google or AWS or Azure 100%, but you have so much stuff still on-prem that, you might have your customer data in You might not be able to push in the cloud. You might be building customized stacks to run algorithmic trading. You know, there's so many things that we have to make this acceptance of a heterogeneous environment. And as Matt said, try to reduce complexity with specific tooling that addresses specific use cases and needs.
Well,
sorry, Matt, I interrupted you.
On that very issue of the heterogeneous environment, I mean, I want to drill into some of the features of CloudCenter, but again, I put myself in the mind of this theoretical IT manager where she is thinking, I want to be able to move things. I really want to maybe change the balance of power in that I have various workloads with various different clouds. I get a certain lock-in. I want to avoid lock-in. Maybe that's the word I'm really talking about. Because in the old days, there was this horrible word, I'm really locked into X vendor. And now in the cloud, hey, maybe I can avoid lock-in. But it turns out, you know, the new boss is a lot like the old boss. And now I'm locked into this one provider because I have so much of my workload there. So I'm kind of dreaming of this solution like a Cisco CloudCenter that says, you know what, I can manage these so freely and so easily that I can get past this idea of cloud vendor lock-in. Matt, does any of that make any sense, or am I just rambling without any sense?
No, James, look, I would hate to sort of say that, you know, all of this is going to be easy and we can just like float applications around. I mean, if we think about the projections from IDC, they're talking about 50% application growth in the next 2 years.
Wow.
So the explosion of applications are just going to continue to just, you know, grow. On top of that, of those, you know, are going to be 47% thereabouts are going to be microservices, services on top of that. And each microservice will have roughly around 20 dependencies. So now you start seeing the landscape of what IT organizations need to manage when we talk about consistent policy or consistent, you know, assurance and experience of that application. So if you talk about the landscape maybe just 5 years ago, I think it was very different. 5 years ago, I think we had fairly understood processes. We had very, IT organization had, you know, I think a number of tools in their kit that they could leverage. But when you take the explosion of applications that are occurring, the microservices that the development organization is starting to develop, and the dependencies between those applications, the new mode at what you're seeing is more of a, what's being called as continuous integration and continuous deployment. And that really is about agility. How can I start thinking about getting that application or that service out there quicker and continuously? But what that has happened and evolved is the tool set, the management, the actual cloud management tools are evolving along with it. And so, you know, for CloudCenter, who has a history of, you know, and is going through this transition, we have to acknowledge the tool sets that are emerging. And so does an IT organization, are they looking to manage these cloud management tools themselves, you know, adding an additional layer of complexity? So now not only am I managing the service, I'm managing the tool on top of that. And the tool landscape is growing, you know, tremendously as well. So that's skill sets, that's, you know, resources, that's cost, just to manage the tool landscape, let alone the actual service.
Work me through that. I think I'm not totally sure I understand that. I'm almost there. So they're not just managing the tools, but they're managing another layer. Please explain to me what are the two layers there that are being managed?
Yeah, well, so look, at the end of the day, everything comes down to the application of the service and the experience to your end customer.
Right.
You know, if you cannot ensure, secure, and provide that experience, then I think really we have other problems. You know, there's some serious problems in that.
Right.
But when we talk about cloud and multi-cloud, and we start now branching out, the new development organizations that are starting to deliver in the new mode of development is starting to encroach into IT and starting to provide their best of breed tools. And we don't, at Cisco, absolutely want to interfere with those tools. We want to embrace those tools.
Sure.
And that's really what I think what we're talking about with the future of IT and where it's headed.
Okay.
Because the landscape's growing, not only the number of applications and services that you have to maintain for the experience, but also the tool sets, whether it's native tool sets within AWS, It's tool sets that you might have homegrown in your private data center,
right,
or other clouds that you also are leveraging.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think delving into the future is super interesting. Before we look into that crystal ball, Costas, I'd just like to hear, I mean, if it was someone to walk up to you at a party and go, so, all right, so what are the really key features of Cisco CloudCenter? What are the big deal things, like it does X, X, and X, and it does this? What is really the gist of why a company would want to use the Cisco CloudCenter?
Sure, and by the way, we CloudCenter evolved into CloudCenter Suite. It evolved into a SaaS service, and that's the important component that Matt's team are evolving effectively, and he'll talk about a bit more about that. But the three components and the three capabilities, and that's a key word for us in the way that we're positioning the whole cloud portfolio. We're around modeling applications, so you were able to CloudCenter is able to see targets in different environments, including on premises as well as different public clouds. So you would talk to the APIs of those public clouds, and then you would go and model an application with drag and drop, with a drag and drop kind of GUI, and then you, depending on your governance needs and policies you would set up, that application would be able to be deployed and moved between different environments. So instead of having to go and prepare, I don't know, an EC2 instance and pick up the specific database that Amazon, for example, offers, you would be able to do that once in the CloudCenter Suite workload manager kind of dashboard in the user interface, and then you would direct the program, the software, to be able to deploy and redeploy that application as you wanted into the different environments between, and therefore move it, right? You mentioned lock-in, for example. Some of the customers that were that are using CloudCenter Suite would be using it for moving applications because for cost reasons, right? For performance reasons, for compliance reasons. And so that's the first component. One kind of sub-bullet to that, Matt before talked about making sure that your on-prem environment looks as close as possible to the cloud. Why is that? Because with organizations that have lots of, we don't want to use the word legacy, actually. It's their existing, dependencies, their systems, they have data centers all around the world, and they have different types of hardware storage systems. CloudCenter was a way to use an API-ification effectively of your on-prem environment, that when you then presented and modeled this application, it would just ping infrastructure targets and would be able to deploy that application faster, rather than going through a laborious ticketing system where you have to talk to a storage team and say, I need this LAN, for example, or to the sysadmin to say, I need this, I need you to stretch your VMware estate to create a new VM. Those things are things that CloudCenter Suite can take care of. That's the first component. Okay. The second component, sorry, did you?
No, I was just very quick. I was going to say, like, the whole technology rests on the idea of the API. It makes that possible. If I'm hearing you correctly.
There's two components to that. There's the modernization of the infrastructure via use of the API. And yes, you're right. When we talk to either the public cloud or the on-premises environment, we have to talk to APIs. But there's also the second component, which was the engine behind those repetitive tasks that CloudCenter would automate. So there's automation, there's an orchestration engine. We call this the action orchestrator. It was basically the engine that you could that would take the application and do all the different steps, carry out all the different steps for that application to be deployed.
Right.
But the other side of that would be being able to offer that orchestration engine to customers so they could create their own sandbox custom-made orchestrations. So you want to go to a cloud and create a virtual networking environment or a VPC, for example, you can do that. You can tell this automation engine to do that. And I'm sure that Matt will have much more additional scenarios to cover there. And the third component is around cost control. So CloudCenter suite has a component. Its third component is around being able to monitor and understand cost profiles and what kind of services you're consuming, especially in the public cloud. That's a very, very big topic, especially now with the pandemic where budgets are shrunk and you have to always balance application performance with the cost, either on-prem or in the public clouds. But I'll defer to, that was my marketing spiel. I will defer to.
No, you got it a lot. I saw the 3 points really clearly too. Those are 3 bullet points, and each of the 3 made sense to me actually, especially the cost piece at the end. So let's look to the future. I think it's really critical because I think we're all evolving. That the technology is evolving so fast. If we're having this conversation a couple years from now, I mean, where is Cisco CloudCenter going? Where is multi-cloud going? Matt, what do you see in terms of the future evolution of Cisco CloudCenter?
Yeah, no. So look at this is exactly where we are. So James, I think you caught us at the right time because we're going through this, and I think you're going to start seeing really soon some announcements on where we're going, and I think that's going to be a real indication of how important cloud is to Cisco and what we're doing to expand the capabilities. So first and foremost, let's acknowledge the transition of what is occurring in the landscape of cloud. So we have virtual machines that are something to manage regardless of what cloud you're on. You have containers that are emerging as the new paradigm of abstraction that is occurring. And then on top of it, not the last one, but the third one would be serverless. Right. So now you have a number of different, segments of what you have to control and maintain when it comes to cloud. So that means, where we're going is, again, back to these different modes at which you deploy your workloads, whether it's on a virtual machine or a container or even a serverless function, requires a different level or a different best of breed tool set in order to deliver that. Now, there's a couple that are emerging. So it's not like the landscape is growing unbound to the point where, any tool set will do. So the emergence of enterprise ready or tool sets that really are being adopted by either the developer community or the infrastructure as code, what I call the cloud architect, is the ones that you're going to start seeing Cisco embrace. And that really becomes the future of not only where we're going with CloudCenter, but what we started incorporating into other SaaS platforms that are very important to Cisco. And one of them is Intersight. So when we talk about cloud, Intersight is that platform where it can not only start working with virtual machines, containers, and servers, serverless functions, but it also now gives you full stack visibility of those resources because we're collecting and monitoring the telemetry and information of those services. And then how do we have the tool set that are on top of that to manage whether that VM is on a private cloud, whether that container is on a public cloud, whether you're calling out to a serverless function. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the future and the evolution. It's about how do we start really acknowledging the tool landscape and start really bringing those in and how important they are through this new development lifecycle. When I talked about the continuous integration and the continuous deployment.
So Intersight is a function of CloudCenter, or is it a standalone concept?
So Intersight is again one of those tools that a lot of people might not have heard because we've been developing Intersight for the past 3 years, and it's been there for a while. But really now it's the capabilities we're going to be adding to Intersight. And really Intersight started its sort of very beginning genesis was really about managing the very first layer of what cloud is, which is compute. A lot of folks, when you talk cloud, the assumption is, I can abstract the compute layer. Well, compute is at the heart of everything. You still need this infrastructure, let alone you also need the storage that goes with that. You need the networking that goes with that. So what Intersight started with was having the ability to manage that physical layer. So now we start building on top of that layer. So now we start the abstractions, the virtual machine capabilities, And so how do we manage the hypervisors? And then on top of it, the containers. And then how do we manage the containers? And we're working with Kubernetes in order to orchestrate those containers. And then when you start having those pieces, you can build things like serverless. Now that's just now that layer. Now what's the tools to monitor? What's the tools to orchestrate? What's the tools to manage those cloud environments? So you can start seeing this layering approach that we're doing to Intersight. And this really is the future. And this is where Cisco's going.
Interesting. Okay. What then? I think that probably there are many people that are looking around for a cloud management platform. Is there something that you would say really distinguishes CloudCenter? Costas, this might be a ball for you. I don't know. It's like is a pitch for yourself. Is this what is different about CloudCenter that distinguishes it in the world of multi-cloud management platforms?
It's interesting that you that you kind of bring this up. You mentioned kind of the management aspect. I think,
right.
And I go back to my kind of myth busting kind of conversation.
Okay.
I think we're moving towards a place where, and if you see how the analysts are talking about cloud management, we're moving away from generic terms that are, they're panacea for customers. They're the promised land. They will do everything. Mm-hmm. And that is very, very key in terms of what our strategy is. So customers, Matt mentioned the cost of tools, right? I'll get back to specifically to CloudCenter, but right. He mentioned the cost of managing the tools. I think customers they want to simplify. We're getting to a point where there's an opportunity for the industry generally, and that's not just Cisco and the data center and cloud business. Is Cisco in general, and it's other organizations as well. We're reaching a convergence point where technology has to be simplified because it can, right? You see the zero trust. The internet is your firewall. There is no firewall. You operate across the internet using a zero trust policy. Mm-hmm. People don't want to manage, to have to build stacks that they have to host and maintain and then upgrade them and manage them. So the whole idea of cloud management, I think, is going away towards, I want to be able to access a platform, a source of modular capabilities, so I can perform specific cloud, and you can use a different name there, but cloud operations. Like what are, Matt just described, I described three kind of unique capabilities to kind of answer your question in terms, it's a CloudCenter. It was one of the first software that enabled that build model once, build once, deploy anywhere you want with just a few clicks. Right. That was the secret sauce. We then added the cost functionality, and then we saw the need of expanding that orchestration. Now, those are capabilities that, frankly, in the olden days would add complexity to a customer because, there's another tool. Now you give me another tool. Yeah, I get that. I get it's a use case. Right. What we're trying to do is take the capabilities and move them into a platform that allows customers not to have to invest to a thing and then go linearly, and unlock different stages if you want, but offer that a la carte as a service delivered from the cloud with a ton of other functionality. And Matt mentioned some around the visibility, around the containerization that we see as super important use cases. Mm-hmm. Wrapping this up, the future is around that Cisco is kind of our North Star, is simplifying with platforms that are delivered from the cloud, and they're definitely multi-cloud friendly. So we're heavy in integrations and working with the different public cloud providers. And you see that not just in the engineering effort within Matt's business unit, which is, the computing kind of business unit, but we are doing the same thing in the security business unit and in the networking business unit. We want to build simple control points that actually talk to each other. So then we're breaking down the silos between our customers' teams, and orchestration and automation across those control points is going to be super important and super key.
that's all good. I want to make sure I want to understand one point. You talked about management, and maybe I heard or misheard you. You might have said it's not so much management; it's this. It's we're moving past thinking about management. It's not. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah. I can clarify that.
Okay.
If you know, there's we're moving away from kind of generic terms, if you want. You know,
Okay.
cloud management, multi-cloud management has its own definition based on the vendor who wants to define a product and push it to
Right.
market.
It's a
But
vague
I
term
think
at this point.
exactly, it's exactly as is multi-cloud and
Right.
you know, the distinctions between what is a private cloud and what is not. The reality is that you have organizations that, you know, okay, I get that. Tell me what it does. What are the capabilities? What are the specific use cases? And let me pick and choose. You know, but give me that consistency on a platform that allows me to do that. I don't have to go and learn a different tool. I don't have to go and, you know, I'm using 3 different clouds. Do I have to, if you can help me, you know, use some of the capabilities, I'm not going to need all the capabilities you're offering, but if you can help me use them instead of me having to go and learn cloud specific tools, for example, you're saving me time. You're saving time and money. I have one person to call, one vendor to call. And if you're a vendor, you know, if you're cloud agnostic, as Cisco is, for example, we don't have a horse in that race.
Right.
You know, that mitigates risk for me. So I think we're moving to that era where we're seeing behind, you know, okay, what does management mean? What do you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve here in terms of your use cases, specific use cases that you're trying to support?
Interesting. Okay. That does make sense. Matt, I'll give you the last word. Is there something that either the future, something we need to know about CloudCenter or multi-cloud, some help for some poor manager who's trying to handle the headaches of multi-cloud management, multi-cloud operations? What should they know about?
You're not alone. This is complex. There's, I would say the landscape is rapidly evolving. So what was maybe the industry standard 5 years ago has completely shifted. And that I think is really important. What I think Costas was trying to highlight, if things are rapidly moving, and we just acknowledge they're accelerating even faster because of the pandemic and the digitization that's occurring.
Totally.
Can you build systems? Can you build processes? Can you build IT, you know, end-to-end structures and governance and policies that are rigid? So what really that requires, because of how quickly this is going, is really to sort of go, look, at the end of the day, if someone is going to take something off my plate, whether it's the lifecycle management of the software, because you know what, that stack that we just talked about, you know, whether it's the virtual machine, the operating system, the functions that go into it, there's a lot of software elements in there. And it's really challenging because there's security vulnerabilities that might occur at every single layer.
Right.
That's just one element. Now I have to take that and I have to put that in AWS, or I might have to put that in Google, or I might have to put that on my private cloud. So what I'm talking about is the security domain, and the lifecycle management is becoming just almost to the point where does IT want to be in the business of not only the responsibility of assurance of the service and the applications, but also the tool landscape in order to validate and verify? Can they offload some of that to a SaaS? Can they offload that to an, you know, some trusted partner or company? And that would be where you still get the capabilities, you still get the service, you still get the functionality, but can someone else manage the heavy lifting of the number of updates, the upgrades, changes, the windows? And that's what we're talking about, SaaS delivered. So what you're going to see at Cisco is SaaS delivered. That is really where we're taking that burden and we're going to manage the security. We're going to manage the operations of the capability that I think IT is looking for. In the tools landscape that's evolving rapidly, but I think there's standard tools that I think, you know, if I were to call them out, I think we'd all sort of agree. That tools landscape is becoming really integral to the service that we're going to offer. And really, I'll leave it with this. With this, Intersight really at the end of the day is our destination to offer that as a SaaS delivered landscape for not only the infrastructure, the cloud management capabilities, and the observability of that entire stack.
Well, it is going to be interesting. I mean, I think you really said it when you said things are evolving really quickly. There's no doubt about that. I think even keeping up with it all is really a key difficulty. I want to thank the two of you for sharing your expertise. I definitely learned a bunch. I will send you a link when the video is all cut and the podcast is edited. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.